Hi, good day. In the last video, I promised to discuss the rally around the flag effect, and this is me discussing it. I am also again with you from Joe Musings by Monso. Now, rally around the flag effect. What does it mean? You would notice that the Iranian population seems to be particularly stubborn and seem to be particularly impervious and resistant to pressure, trickery, and you will call it stimulation, especially from from Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel and President Trump of Iran. You will notice also that there has always been this 47-year pressure for Iranian civilians, for the Iranian citizens and people to actually revolt against the Iranian government. And more, as America and Israel and their allies continue to put pressure on Iran, it seems to be more and more that about the only viable last option they have to topple the Iranian government that they call regime is to use their own people to do it. I want you to remember how it worked in Libya against Gaddafi. I want you to remember how it worked against Assad in Syria. In fact, I want you to remember how it worked initially, against the Taliban in Afghanistan with the Northern Alliance, if you remember. Do you understand? That is essentially the same model. When America and their allies, when they want to take out the government, what they do is to pressure the people with sanctions. They will make them hungry, they will make them starve, they will deprive them of funds, they will suck away dollars from them, so that they will now use the media to encourage the people, you know, to essentially believe that it is the leaders that are impoverishing them, not necessarily the external actors that are sanctioning them. And they turn against the leaders and they essentially help America and Israel and the allies to do their job. That is the usual way, the usual cycle. However, they ran into a roadblock with the Iranian citizen. They seem to be following the opposite of what the Americans and Israelis expect them to, expect them to do. And the most poignant instance is this latest protest riots that happened in Iran about 3-4 weeks before the actual war actually started on past Saturday. If you remember very well, Scott Bessent, who is the US Secretary of the Treasury, actually confessed, self-confessed under no pressure, that what they did was that they sucked out, dollars from the Iranian economy, that one of the major Iranian, economies went down. People made a run for their money in that bank. When the bank is going down, everybody rushes to want to take their deposits off the bank. And when that bank went down, the people made a rush for that money. The merchants, they understand, in Iran's major business district started selling at prices they could not cope with, and the people naturally revolted. And then these rioters and the arsonists and confessed Mossad and CIA agents, again, they self-confessed yet again. Mike Pompeo came to tell us on TV, put it on Twitter, that actually they were the ones behind those rioters. Even the Israelis said there were Mossad agents accompanying each so-called protester. So they wanted to layer those riots and those killings and those, destructions over the naturally legitimate protests. Unfortunately, the Iranian government and the agents actually took those boys down. And that is why we now have cash out numbers that are as low as 3,117 with the Iranian government, but as high as 32,000 with Trump, who wanted it to cause a regime change, which it did not cause. Now, what is rally around the flag effect? What it means is that when a population is naturally at loggerheads, justly or unjustly with its government, some people insist, some pundits, some experts insist that that is not the time to go to war against that country. Why? Because they believe that if you go to war against that country, everybody who is naturally angry at that regime will actually drop their grievances against the regime and will actually support the regime more instead of less. The idea behind going to war against the country is to do regime change. However, the rally around the flag effect actually states that when you now go to war against that regime, in trying to protect what is left of the country, the people actually coalesce around the government instead of going against them and helping to topple the government. That is what happens in Iran. That was what happened during the June 2025 12-day war. And even more of it is happening now, especially in the light of the martyrdom of the former Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei by the Americans and Israelis. It has caused a major headache for the Americans and the Israelis. The people of Iran are now supporting their leaders massively. In fact, it seems to be odd to me because that support seems to even defy human reasoning. I will give you some important examples. Ever since the war started, the Iranian people have essentially remained on the streets every night, irrespective of what is happening above them, in terms of attacks and bombings by the Americans and the Israelis, and in terms of anti-aircraft, anti-missile fire from their own Iranian government and soldiers. In fact, we have now seen several videos where Iranians will be in the streets. Usually, what they do is that the moment we are currently, Muslims are currently in Ramadan. We are currently in Ramadan. In fact, Iran has now officially changed the name of the military operation to the Ramadan War. So what happens is that the moment those guys break the fast, around Maghrib, immediately they break the fast and they pray Isha, and Tarawih. Instead of going home after Tarawih, they stay on the streets and they start rallying and protesting in massive numbers with flags in support of the current leadership, that the leadership should actually continue to prosecute the war more and more against the adversaries, which are America and Israel. Military pressure, bombings from drones and the fighter jets of the Americans and Israelis do not send them out of the streets. Instead, they are coming in more and more. Again, they don't have yet another reason to remain on the streets. They are mourning their former supreme leader. And then they now appointed a new supreme leader who is the son of the former supreme leader. They came back on the streets again to pledge allegiance to him. And then today they now have an extra reason to be on the streets, which is that they are burying the generals and the leaders and the children that America and Israel has unalived in the course of the war. So essentially giving them more and more reason, to actually coalesce around their leadership instead of fighting them. So Trump and Netanyahu are now in serious problem. They keep insisting that they are doing this for the Iranian people. But the Iranian people they seem to be doing it for are not listening to them at all. Instead of listening to them, they're actually going actively against them and supporting their own government. The so-called Iranians that seem to be supporting, that are going against the current Iranian leadership, against, as in support of Trump and Netanyahu, seems to be more of Iranians in diaspora. Iranians in Brussels, Iranians in Vienna, Iranians in America, Iranians in London, and stuff like that. So that is what we call rally around the flag effect, and that is what is currently happening in here, in the US. That is also one of the reasons, as in Iran, that is also one of the reasons why a ground incursion into Iran by America is bound to fail. They are not just going to be fighting Iranian soldiers. If ordinary Iranians on the street encounter such American soldiers, they may not find it funny with them because there is essentially a whole of society support for the government of the day and a whole of society antagonism for the external invaders as led by America and Israel. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is rally around the flag effect for you. See you in the next episode. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to follow. Don't forget to like. Please do comment and ask your questions. I will gladly take them. Thank you very much. See you in the next episode.